Every so often, we have a conversation here about China and their currency. Today, I would like to talk about some old Chinese bonds that were issued in 1913. They were backed by gold and silver. And so before we get started, most people are confused about what SDRs are, what the IMF is, and the World Bank. But I like to kind of make it simple. Just think of China the way America was in the early 1900s. Before America became a superpower. I mean, make no mistake about it. The reason why America became a superpower is because of her ability to create government bonds, print a fiat currency, build up its military, and of course, we won the war. In World War II, we won the war. Europe's factories were decimated. No factories in Europe, and we were far away from the war zone, and all our factories were still standing. So that's how we became an empire. Think of China the same thing as early in our days. So anyhow, China is going to be selling bonds, but what a lot of people don't realize is China issued some bonds back in 1913. Again, they were backed by gold and silver, but they were not honored. That's the thing. I'm going to show you. Here's one of the bonds from the 1938. And again, they were issued in 1913. They were to mature in 1960. And what you're looking at here is the coupon. If you bought these bonds, and people bought these bonds all over the world, these bonds were marketed on Wall Street. Yes, Wall Street, no less. Anyhow, you bought these bonds, you clipped off, you see the little coupon there? You clipped off the coupon every year, you handed it in to the Chinese government, and they paid you your interest due. As you can see, it says 1938 there. Now, here's the problem. You see a lot of these coupons were not redeemed because China did not honor them. They defaulted. They defaulted in 1938, actually. And let's go into exactly why they defaulted. Now, I'll just let you look at some of the payoff numbers. I mean, these are historic documents. These are the real McCoy. Okay, so real quickly, why don't we talk about why these bonds were not honored? Why they stopped paying them. For one thing, the war broke out and you had Japan. Japan actually came into China and they started to loot all the gold. So China was losing their gold. As I said, Japan stole it. Now Japan took a lot of that gold and they hid it in the Philippines. If you ever wonder why the Marcos family was so rich, and then eventually, the deep state, we're talking America, took the gold away from the Marcos family, and then that gold was stored under the Twin Towers until it was stolen, or should I say it was appropriated before, what happened with the Twin Towers. So it is amazing that how these bonds you're looking at here are associated with the Twin Towers. These bonds are also associated with the American debt ceiling. I mean, obviously, this is all too complicated to talk about in a small little video like this, but it's worth mentioning that our debt ceiling, when the politicians are debating the debt ceiling crisis, they have China and China's new bond program and China entering the IMF. All of that is connected in America's debt problem, whereas China now is joining the IMF. Their yuan currency is going to be part of the SDR, the basket of international currencies. And what does this mean? This is just another nail in the coffin of the Federal Reserve note. I mean, think about it. But okay, let's get back on track. We're talking about these bonds. These are the coupons, as I said earlier. Every year you could clip these coupons off and hand them in to the Chinese government and you would get your 5% interest payment. That's what these bonds were rated at. They were like a 5% interest rate, backed by gold and silver. Okay, but so what we've established so far is the Japanese came in and was stealing the gold before World War II, right before World War II and during the war. And then, to make matters worse, after the war, then you have Chiang Kai-shek. Chiang Kai-shek, you know who he is. And when he went to Taiwan, Taiwan at the time was called Formosa, Chiang Kai-shek fled to Taiwan. He took a lot of gold with him. So, I mean, I'm not making up any excuses for China not honoring these bonds, but I guess there is an argument to say, I mean, who actually has an obligation to pay off these bonds? I guess there's an argument to had that says, hey, possibly Taiwan has some responsibility in settling these old unpaid debts because Chiang Kai-shek took the gold with him. So I guess it is worth noting that it is also illegal, I believe, to buy any new Chinese bonds. If you go technically in American law, you're not really allowed to buy any new Chinese bonds until all the previous bonds have been settled. So that is worth noting that eventually these bonds will have to be settled, won't they? Okay, so let's talk about this. What's going on right for the last decade or so, probably the last almost 20 years, there's a massive restructuring going on throughout the whole entire world. A massive restructuring. Things are changing. I mean, it's a major reset. This major reset is in action, or should I say it's a work in progress. It's very difficult when you're going to change the world's currency situation. I mean, you got America. The dollar has been the reserve currency since 1913 almost. Okay, so that's changing. Of course, they can and they will change the rules at any moment in time to their liking. See, they control the rules. The governments make up the rules, so they will change the rules to their liking. They don't care what you and I think. And of course, Donald Trump was brought in because he is an expert on bankruptcy. Think about it. America, we are slowly going through a bankruptcy. They thought Donald Trump was the best person to handle this bankruptcy because, I mean, is there anybody who knows more about bankruptcy than Donald Trump? What do you have, 5 or 6 of them? But they don't want to tell the world, they don't want to tell the people that. They cannot, the deep state and the elite, they don't want to tell the people, yes, we brought Donald Trump in, even though he's an asshole, because he knows a little bit about bankruptcy, a massive restructuring. Okay, I don't want to beat a dead horse there, but we have to understand what's happening. As China is being lifted up, they are growing, they have all the factories, America is going through a bankruptcy. So why don't we quickly do a recap and summarize this little conversation here on how Asia and China are going to be more important on the world stage, and America is going to have a lot less influence after the completion of this reset or this bankruptcy. So after Donald Trump gets done with us, we're going to have a lot less influence, and maybe that could be a good thing. Why do we need to be influencing the world? Why do we need to be policing the world? We don't. Maybe then we can actually focus on Americans. I mean, I won't hold my breath. I'm not optimistic that these people want to help you and I. But anyhow, I don't want to get off course here. Let's summarize. There's one thing I have to mention, that China did settle these coupons and settle these bonds with the United Kingdom. The people of England it was settled. I believe I've heard numbers like they settled for 10%, and I've heard numbers where they were settled for 35%. But the bottom line is that China honored these coupons or settled their debt with the United Kingdom, but there was a catch. The United Kingdom had to give back Hong Kong. So China's not stupid. When they pay out money, they want something in return. So it is worth noting that the Brits got their money, or got 35% of their money, after they returned Hong Kong. Now, we should also mention that during the IMF deal, the 2010 IMF Code of Reforms. So when everybody made a decision that China was coming into the IMF, that the yuan was going to be part of the SDR basket of currency, they made a deal. And the deal was that eventually China was going to have to honor these coupons, this debt that goes back to 1913. So now, I don't think that you're going to get paid full dollar, of course, because when you're talking about the time that has elapsed, the penalties, you're only going to get no more than probably 35 cents on the dollar. So, okay, let me see here. From 1911 to 1942, these bonds were marketed and sold on Wall Street. Let's not forget. Now, possibly through the war, they might have stopped it. But from 1911 up until the war, Wall Street actually marketed and sold these things. So there are many, many Americans, families, who have these bonds, and these coupons were not redeemed. Eventually, I would hope that anybody who holds these coupons, the American citizens, world citizens, are going to get paid. So we have established that the Brits got paid, but they had to give up Hong Kong. Makes you wonder, what is the United States going to have to give up? Maybe we'll have to give up Nevada. Yeah. Harry Reid would be okay with it. Yeah, go ahead and take Nevada, take our gold, take our silver, and then please redeem your coupons. And we should also mention this also, that sovereign debt is not supposed to have a statute of limitations. Think about it. I mean, no statute of limitations on sovereign debt, but hey, they make up the rules and they can change them anytime they like. But on a final note here, I would like to say this. When you actually factor in inflation, when inflation is put into the equation, governments really never do pay off their debt legitimately, do they? I mean, it's a scam. Look, these were supposed to be backed by gold and silver. Here we are, almost 100 years later, and they may or may not pay them off. You're not going to get gold. You're not going to get silver. There's not going to be any penalties because they make the rules. So hey, inflation, that's the dirty little secret. The governments issue debt, but by the time they pay it off in full, I mean, think about it. It's not legitimate. So the question is not if the Chinese will settle their debts and pay off their gold-backed Chinese bonds, but the question is, how much fiat currency will you receive, or will your grandchildren receive?